VenomousStare back with another StarCraft 2 video. This time we have replays from Nation Wars, which I have not seen a single game of, and it is the finals of Nation Wars, Finland versus South Korea. And if you're not familiar with Nation Wars, it is a nationalistic tournament where each country gets 3 representatives voted on by the fans to represent their country, and they play each other until there are only 2 countries left. South Korea, of course, being the mecca of StarCraft 2, made it to the finals. Innovation here in the bottom right. This is my favorite Terran player. He is a methodical macro machine, and he just brute forces his opponents with his clean mechanics. These are the sort of people that are best to learn from. These are the sort of people who, if you're trying to improve at the game and you're new to the game, these are the sort of guys that you want to focus on, because these sort of tactics that they use are the sort of tactics that will lead you to the highest league. No fancy micro, although Innovation's micro is very clean. No gimmicks, not a lot of cheese, just straight up macro play. Love Innovation. And then in the top left we have the best foreigner ever, Serral. Pretty much single-handedly solo carried Finland to the finals of this tournament. He's already expanded, he's gone double queen, he's got 4 lings on the way. Serral, like Innovation, is an extraordinarily talented macro player, and again the sort of player that you should be watching if you want to learn and improve. I'm going to be flipping between the different first-person points of view throughout the VOD. Notice Innovation could have potentially proxied something by Serral's third, maybe a bunker, maybe something else, but Serral is going to peek around for it and end up just taking his expansion.
Newly birthed queen ready.
Notice how Serral's using Patrol here on some of his lings. Very underutilized command. Patrol is the sort of thing that has always been good, but not a lot of people take advantage of it. We can see Innovation here played very defensive with this Reaper. He sort of is assuming that Serral is not going to do any sort of cheese. That is just not really in Serral's repertoire. He's a defensive macro player. Double Hellion on the way for Inno, and now he's going to peek around with the Reaper.
Command center upgrade.
Perhaps check for a third. But in the early game, notice Innovation really wanted to just check for proxy hatches and be very safe with his Reaper, because pretty much every cheese Zerg can do in the early game, as Innovation actually loses the Reaper there, which is sort of why you don't want to be aggressive with the Reaper. You don't want to dive in very deep. You want to sort of just poke and see what's going on. But Ling Speed finished. Serral was on creep and got him. Notice Serral has already started to extend his creep out. He's gotten Overlord speed. There are a lot of players who sort of say that Overlord speed isn't worth getting, but I don't think this could be further from the truth. In virtually every Zerg matchup, being able to save your Overlords is incredibly worth it. If your opponent makes a Viking, if your opponent makes a Phoenix, if your Zerg opponent tries to range out and kill one of your Overlords so they can get a big Ling flood off, Overlord speed is very good. It helps save mistakes, as we see an Overlord go down there, and more importantly, it really gives you the ability to scout and control the map well. Lings are going to try to sandwich these Hellions, but Innovation has clean micro and he's not going to lose any. Fast third base down here for Inno, as we see a very old build coming out from Innovation. Looks like it's going to be Banshee Hellion, although no cloak has been started yet. I low-key think that Raven openers are underrated. Not a lot of people will make one Raven, because Terran players, as we see a big attempted run in here for Innovation. This is a little bit odd. Usually players like Innovation don't want to lose the Hellions, although right here he could do some big damage. 3 drones going down. Beautiful block on the ramp there from Serral with the queens. Notice how many queens Serral has in the early game. Very good for Zerg to make this many queens in the early game. Obviously creep spread is very good, but they are very versatile for defense, because the Roach Warren was not up. and a little bit of Overseer morphing going on here, and the Viking dies. So flawless defense from Serral, despite the fact that Inno sort of took a risky position and tried to run in with the Hellions. So earlier I pointed out there was no cloak on the Banshee, or no cloak Banshee research, you know what I mean. It's going to be BC. This tournament was played on the most recent patch, so the battlecruiser has been nerfed. That very gimmicky automatic teleport away with impunity was nerfed, and Serral is going to try to dive in here and see what's what. You'll see the tech lab on the starport right as the BC tellies in. Notice Serral right clicks all his drones on one mineral patch so they bunch up and they can't be picked off. Plenty of queens out here, and again, Serral easily defends. Inno does scan and see the spire here, as well as roach speed being researched. If you don't know, Terran players, if their buildings are quivering like this, they're researching something. Inno is going to try to pressure this base, and this is one of those things that you don't actually expect to work. You're just sort of forcing your opponent to do something. Furthermore, it opens up other sides of the map. We can see here, if Serral wasn't god tier, potentially this area would have been completely open without any queens to defend, but we had some roach slaying on that side of the map for Serral, who is getting +1 range attack to go with his roaches. Yamato Master Blaster on the way, and we see here that both the Medevac and Liberator range upgrade are on the Fusion Core now, which are literally the only upgrades that people would ever really get from the tech lab on the starport. This is a buff to Terran because having to get the tech lab was sort of a pain in the ass. Of course, people got Banshee Cloak, but that sort of goes without saying. Overseer is still out here for Serral, ready to dart in and scout or maybe drop changelings. It's going to be mech here for Inno, who is getting double mech upgrades as well as adding multiple factories. Zerg players, if you're unaware, if you scout into the Terran base and you see a bunch of factories, that's mech. If you see a bunch of barracks, that's bio. Very basic, but a lot of people don't know really how that works or what to look for in the early game. Serral does get a contaminate off before the Overseer dies, which is beautiful. And if we go to structures here, no Hydra Dim. So presumably Serral is going to rely on these corruptors to kill the BCs. Notice how active innovation is being with these blue flame hellions. Always poking and prodding. Inno's doing some serious damage. We're going to have to take it back a couple steps, because Serral went down to attack this fourth. Inno bought the blue flame hellions over. I have a big cut on the inside of my mouth that makes it difficult to talk. This is a common strategy a lot of the Korean players like, where they will build a depot sort of at the base of their natural and third, and it's easier to right click all of your rally points onto the depot, and we can see here innovation making just a colossal mistake not having those tanks sieged. Makes it very easy for Serral. Inno is focused over here with these Hellbats that are just going to die to queens, and Inno is in some big trouble here. Serral is going to get on top of his production. He has enough corruptors to defend against the BCs, presumably. Although Yamatos will go off as they are tellied away, but more Roachling is coming down here, going to break the mech player innovation, at least his tank line. Mass repair on the BCs, you love to see that. Corrosive bile being used to kill the repairing SCVs. Inno has just lost a plethora of workers here. Basically 2 full bases worth. Thors and tanks out here, so Serral might have trouble closing, but Inno has lost so many workers, I don't think it's going to matter. And as the tank gets biled down and the Roach Ravager screams forward here, looks like innovation's pretty screwed, honestly. As at this point he's lost over 50 workers. The 4th base, or 5th base, finishes, but it is what it is. Serral continuing to make Roachling here. Interesting to me, he didn't make Hydra, which I guess Hydras are pretty awful, so it makes sense, but a lot of Zerg players we see do sort of favor Roach Hydra in these situations. Biles killing the natural, sort of zoning out the BC as the Corruptors come out here for Serral. And notice Serral's very light on the upgrades, very heavy on the units. And I do not think he's going to be able to burst this BC down, but Innovation is just being ravaged here. Lots of tanks here up on this high ground. Serral's going to push up anyway, bile down a couple tanks, kill a third with the roach shots, and notice he's kiting up perfectly into the main base, trying to break Innovation, who taps out. That was game 1 of Nation Wars. Sub for more.